tiny sword, a dismembered piglet, and silk from the Byzantine Empire. These aren't fragments of legend or myth, but real relics from a toddler's tomb sealed over 13 centuries ago in the heart of Europe. In the quiet village of Matzes, Bavaria, archaeologists unearthed a burial so lavish, so symbolically loaded, that it could rewrite our understanding of early medieval status, spirituality, and grief. The body belonged not to a king or a warrior, but to a toddler, now called the Ice Prince. Why would a child be buried with such grandeur? What kind of family would offer silk, silver, and ritual sacrifice to a child lost in infancy? And what do these exotic materials and intricate artifacts say about the world he was born into, a world on the threshold between Rome and Christendom? The excavation was carried out by the Bavarian State Office for Monument Preservation, known as the BLFD. During planned construction in 2021, workers stumbled upon the outer walls of an ancient Roman villa. This alone was significant, testament to the lingering Roman footprint in southern Germany. But deeper still, something truly unique lay waiting. A sealed, coffin-sized chamber of stone, undisturbed for more than 1,300 years. To preserve the fragile organic remains inside, archaeologists deployed a cutting-edge technique previously reserved for forensic cases and conservation emergencies: liquid nitrogen flash freezing. The tomb, complete with earth, air, and the decaying trace of medieval life, was solidified and extracted whole. It was then transported in a custom steel frame to the Bavarian State Archaeological Collection in Munich, where researchers could excavate in controlled, sterile conditions over many months. Inside the lab, each layer of sediment, textile fiber, and bone fragment was carefully catalogued, revealing an astonishingly well-preserved cross-section of 7th century life and death. Radiocarbon analysis placed the burial between the years 670 and 680, during the twilight of Merovingian rule. DNA sequencing revealed the child had pale hair and strikingly blue eyes. Strontium isotope analysis confirmed he had grown up locally, likely never traveling more than a few kilometers from where he was born. Anatomical analysis suggested the boy was around 18 months old and had suffered from repeated ear infections. Ultimately, he may have died from meningitis, a complication of untreated chronic otitis media, still deadly in many parts of the world, even today. But it wasn't the cause of death that stunned the researchers, it was what came next. The child had been laid to rest with care rarely seen in any burial from that era, let alone one belonging to someone so young. His body was dressed in a long-sleeved linen tunic, but it was the hemline that caught the archaeologist's breath. A glimmer of silk from the Eastern Roman Empire, likely dyed with expensive insect-based pigments and woven in patterns reserved for elites. Silk like this would have passed through hands in Constantinople, Alexandria, or Antioch, across Mediterranean trade routes and up the Rhine Valley, possibly exchanged for amber, furs, or even human captives. And yet here it was, wrapped around a toddler in a Bavarian countryside villa. The presence of such a precious material in a rural grave speaks volumes. It suggests not only wealth, but deep social ties, possibly even diplomatic or religious connections reaching far beyond the Alps. Beneath the child, a fur blanket, likely from a bear or deer, was tucked neatly around him. On his tiny feet were shoes fitted with silver spurs, custom crafted and purely ceremonial. Nearby, a child-sized sword, sheathed and tied to a silver inlaid belt, lay at his side. Though far too heavy for him to wield, its purpose was clear: to present him as someone of rank, perhaps the heir to a noble household or a family with military connections, a silent symbol of future power that would never be realized. Most mysterious was the golden cross, fashioned from wafer-thin foil and laid across his chest. It was not jewelry, but a funerary token, delicate, devotional, and likely the earliest material evidence of Christianity in this family. At a time when pagan and Christian customs coexisted uneasily, such a cross suggests a household caught between worlds, adopting new beliefs while preserving old rites. Surrounding the child, a carefully arranged tableau of objects: a comb, a bronze wash basin, a wooden bowl, and a drinking cup clad in silver. These were not randomly chosen. The comb may have symbolized purification, the bowl, domestic life, the silver-rimmed goblet, wealth or hospitality. There were offerings of food too: hazelnuts, a pear, slices of apple, all lovingly placed to accompany the child into the afterlife. Their presence was no accident. These were symbolic gifts, perhaps intended to nourish him in the next world or to satisfy ancestral customs tied to hospitality, memory, and the continuity of the soul. But the most jarring object was the piglet. Small bones revealed the animal had been ritually dismembered. Its limbs were separated, its skull carefully removed, signs of deliberate slaughter, not decay. Initial reports had misidentified the remains as a small dog, but closer forensic analysis confirmed its porcine origins. Whether as food, sacrifice, or symbolic protection, the piglet was there for a reason, and its inclusion raises fascinating questions about syncretic ritual practices in early Christian Europe. Even the location of the burial carried symbolic weight. The Roman villa had been abandoned for generations, but after the boy's interment, it was partially renovated. Walls were reinforced. Rooms were sealed. For decades, perhaps centuries, families returned to this site, not just to grieve, but to remember, to honor, to commune with something sacred. The site itself may have taken on the aura of sanctity, becoming a private family shrine long before organized parish churches became common. BLFD director Matthias Feil remarked, "This wasn't a simple burial. This was an act of long-term remembrance. They not only buried the child with honors, they kept his memory alive for generations." A child who had not yet spoken full sentences was treated as though he bore the weight of a dynasty. This discovery compels us to reconsider how ancient societies viewed youth, grief, and status. In many historical narratives, children are footnotes, fragile, replaceable, often unnamed. But this child's tomb is a monument, a statement, a declaration of value. It speaks to how even the youngest lives could be enshrined with meaning far beyond their years. It also represents a cultural intersection. The blending of pagan animal sacrifice with Christian symbolism illustrates a period of spiritual ambiguity where old gods and new faiths coexisted, not in conflict, but in dialogue. These were not black and white conversions, but gradual, intimate transformations of belief across generations. Each object placed in the tomb speaks to a tension between continuity and change, between ancestral identity and emerging doctrine. And finally, this find demonstrates the future of archaeology itself. By flash freezing an entire burial environment and transporting it whole, scientists preserved context that would otherwise be lost in excavation. They could study pollen, soil stratigraphy, microfauna, all in situ. This method opens doors for the study of other fragile burials, including those submerged underwater, encased in permafrost, or threatened by climate change. It may someday become the gold standard for burial preservation, a time capsule of the ancient world, sealed in ice and science. In the tomb of the Ice Prince, we don't just meet a child, we encounter an empire's shadow, a religion's first light, and a family's grief so profound they built a sanctuary of memory from silk and silver. 13 centuries later, his story still echoes, through fur, cross and clay, through ritual and relic, through questions we are only beginning to answer. Subscribe for more true science stories where the past doesn't just whisper, it calls to us.